Most people imagine contact begins with a craft lowering out of the night sky, or a figure approaching from the tree line, or a sudden beam of light washing over the body like a revelation the mind was never prepared to receive. But contact never starts with spectacle. It never begins at the moment witnesses describe. By the time the sky moves, the process has already been unfolding around you, through you, and inside you, for far longer than your memory knows how to track. The first signal is always subtle, almost invisible, because real contact is not an interruption. It is an alignment. It does not break into your life. It synchronizes with it. Long before anything external appears, your inner field starts to shift. You feel it as a strange pressure in your intuition, as if something has quietly stepped into the background of your awareness and is waiting for you to catch the shape of its presence. You begin to notice patterns that seem too deliberate to be chance, too precise to be coincidence, yet too quiet to declare themselves openly. The veil between your thoughts and something watching begins to thin, not as a threat, but as an invitation you cannot trace to a source. That is the first signal, the subtle warping of the inner landscape that tells you something is leaning toward you from a dimension that does not rush. The first signal is emotional. Your mood tilts for no recognizable reason. You feel a pull toward the sky at night, a curiosity that lifts your eyes without your permission. You feel observed, not by a predator and not by a ghost, but by an intelligence that is measuring your openness the way a musician listens to the tension of a string. You think it is your imagination at first. You always do. But imagination does not create patterns that repeat themselves with this kind of precision. Imagination does not feel like another mind brushing the edges of your own, then disappearing the moment you try to focus on it. Something else does. Time begins to behave differently in the early stages. Not dramatically, not yet, but enough that you feel certain moments stretch, while others collapse too quickly to fully inhabit. You walk into a room and feel reality thicken for a second as though your presence was anticipated. You leave a space and feel the air behind you settle with an intelligence that was waiting for solitude. The first signal is not a message. It is a field. And when that field touches you, your biology responds even if your conscious mind does not. Your breath slows for no reason. Your attention sharpens without effort. Your dreams become vivid, structured, almost rehearsed. The mundane begins to carry a strange weight, as if something inside the ordinary is waking up and looking back at you. Dreams are often the earliest stage because your mind cannot defend itself while asleep. In that vulnerability, contact begins testing your resonance. You dream of faces without features, lights that pulse in patterns you somehow understand, landscapes that are not earthly but feel familiar to a place deeper than memory. You wake up feeling observed, not by something outside of you, but by something that followed you back. Many dismiss this as nothing, but the intelligent pattern behind these dreams is too deliberate to ignore once it begins repeating. The same colors reappear, the same symbols, the same sense of being taught something you cannot remember in the morning, but still feel the weight of in your chest. The first signal also rearranges your attention. You find yourself drawn toward information you never sought. You overhear conversations about extraterrestrial contact at the exact moment your internal curiosity peaks. Videos appear on your feed that seem timed to your inner questions. Books fall into your life that answer things you never admitted you were asking. This is not an algorithm. It is what happens when the field around you begins bending probability to accelerate your readiness. Contact does not make itself known. It makes you aware. Once your inner field shifts, your external world begins to follow. Technology around you behaves strangely. Your phone lags at the exact moment you think about a presence. Streetlights flicker when you walk beneath them with a mind full of questions. You feel bursts of static in your hands. You start to sense there is an invisible architecture surrounding your life that you were blind to before. The first signal is not contact, it is calibration. And calibration begins by teaching your consciousness how to perceive what is already near. Fear and curiosity begin to rise together, not as opposites but as twins. You feel a pull towards something you do not yet trust, and a caution around something that feels strangely familiar. That tension is intentional. They are reading your emotional language. They want to know what your instinct does before your mind rewrites it. Contact is not about intelligence. It is about resonance. Before they ever approach, they measure yours. The first signal also exposes fractures in your life. Old relationships feel misaligned. Your sense of identity loosens around the edges. You start questioning choices you once considered permanent. This is not chaos. This is clearing space. Contact cannot enter a life that is too tightly bound to its stagnation. So the field begins to loosen the threads you were never meant to keep. You feel the shift as restlessness, as dissatisfaction, as the unspoken sense that something is coming and everything must rearrange to make room for it. Sometimes the first signal is physical, a hum in your ears that doesn't match any medical condition, a heat in your palms, a tingling at the base of your spine, a vibration behind your forehead. These are not symptoms. These are adjustments. Your nervous system is learning how to register a frequency it was not designed to detect consciously. You interpret it as sensation, but sensation is the lowest rung of a much larger ladder. They begin with biology because biology cannot lie. Your body responds before your imagination does. Then comes the sense of presence, not the presence of a human, not the presence of a spirit. The presence of something that has no form in the room, but has weight. You feel it the way you feel someone standing behind you, even when you hear no footsteps. You turn, expecting to find someone. Nothing, but the feeling doesn't leave. That is the threshold. Once presence enters your perception, the stages have already begun to unfold. This is when they begin testing your awareness. You have brief moments of clarity where the entire world feels unnaturally silent, as if something turned down the volume of reality to hear your mind more clearly. Animals react strangely around you. They stare at corners where nothing is visible. They follow movements that your eyes cannot track. Children begin speaking to you with surprising insight, as if your field has become readable to those who do not rely on logic. This is not imagination. This is resonance recognition. The world always reacts to the presence of another intelligence, even if you do not know how to interpret it. Once you reach this stage, the process becomes irreversible. Contact is not a one-time event, it is a progression. Once the first signal integrates into your life, the field does not withdraw. It begins preparing you for the next stage, the witnessing stage, where the sky begins to respond to your awareness. But before that happens, they must ensure one thing, that you can feel them before you see them, because seeing them without feeling them would break you. Feeling them first prepares your nervous system. It teaches your consciousness the shape of the unfamiliar. It teaches your heart not to fear the impossible. This is why the first signal is subtle. It does not shock. It prepares. It aligns. It stretches your awareness slowly until the impossible becomes natural, until the idea of being observed becomes comforting, until the presence you once feared now feels like something ancient returning to your life after a long absence. Contact never begins with lights in the sky. It begins with the quiet rearranging of your inner world, the gentle pull towards something beyond your understanding, and the unmistakable feeling that something intelligent has stepped into the edge of your reality and is waiting for you to notice.
The moment the first signal embeds itself into your life, the world doesn't change, your relationship to the world does. What once felt stable begins to feel hollow in places. What once felt random begins forming subtle chains of meaning. You move through familiar streets with the sense that something unseen has moved ahead of you, adjusting the environment like a stage crew preparing the next scene. You don't know what is shifting, but you know something is, and that quiet certainty becomes the new gravity by which your days begin to organize themselves. Your intuition sharpens in ways You cannot justify logically. You sense things before they occur. Not because you are predicting them, but because you are aligning with a timeline already bending around you. Contact does not enter your life through events. It enters through perception. It tunes you into a frequency you were never allowed to hear, while your awareness was still bound to the noise of unawakened living. You begin to pick up threads of intention, woven into moments that would have once passed unnoticed. You hear meaning inside silence. You feel direction inside stillness. You register presence inside spaces that should be empty. This is the refinement phase of the first signal, where your consciousness becomes porous enough for their field to move through without resistance. As this sensitivity grows, the boundary between internal and external becomes less defined. Thoughts appear that feel partially your own and partially something else. They do not intrude. They drift in like whispers carried on a wind you cannot locate. You feel them as impressions rather than sentences, as if an intelligence is learning the contours of your mind, the way hands learn the shape of an unfamiliar instrument. They test resonance gently, never pushing too far, always withdrawing the moment fear begins to rise. They are not trying to control your mind. They are trying to harmonize with it. Their goal is not influence but coherence. During this phase, memory behaves strangely. Some memories sharpen with a natural clarity, while others grow distant, as if certain parts of your life are being brought forward and others dim to make space for new awareness. This is not manipulation. This is organization. Contact requires you to carry a certain shape of mind, a certain openness, a certain internal posture. And so the field begins sorting your attention, not by force but by resonance. What no longer serves falls into the background. What is essential rises without effort. You feel like you are being reorganized from the inside out, but in truth, you are returning to a state you were always capable of holding. The world outside begins mirroring your internal shift. You encounter people unexpectedly aligned with this emerging direction. You overhear conversations that answer questions you only asked internally. You meet strangers who speak with an uncanny familiarity, as if something orchestrated the encounter to deliver a needed piece of awareness. In this stage, the environment behaves like a teaching field. Probability bends without breaking. Synchronicity becomes a language. You feel guided, not by any visible entity, but by a pattern that feels too alive to be an accident. This is how the first signal expands. It synchronizes your life to a rhythm you did not know you were already following. Your sleep deepens in unusual ways. You wake up feeling as though you traveled rather than rested. Bits of impressions linger, rooms filled with light, strange architectures, symbols that fade the moment you try to hold them. You feel the aftertaste of contact without the memory of it. This is one of the most delicate stages. They begin to approach your consciousness during dream states to test your responses without overwhelming your waking mind. You wake with a sense of having learned something that sits too large to recall. You feel mentally stretched, emotionally softened, physically calm. Something touched you while you slept, but not in a way that causes fear. Instead, it causes a sense of remembering something you never actually lived.
The first signal also sharpens your sense of being separate from the noise of the world. You withdraw naturally, not out of isolation, but out of instinct. You spend more time alone, not to escape others, but to listen. You become protective of your inner world because you feel something forming there that cannot share space with distraction. Social interactions feel heavier, less authentic, less aligned. You start speaking less and observing more. Contact matures attention. It pulls your senses inward until they feel like an antenna pointed at something just beyond your conscious range. You do not withdraw out of fear. You withdraw because something within you is being tuned. This is when the earliest external anomalies begin. Peripheral motion appears where nothing physical moves. A flash of light catches your eye with no source. A shadow passes across a wall without anything standing between it and the light. You feel a shift in the air that carries the density of a presence stepping in. though no form is visible. These early manifestations are not mistakes. They are intentional thresholds. They want to see how your nervous system responds to the faintest hint of the unfamiliar. If you panic, the field recedes. If you freeze, it pauses. If you stay curious, even for a second, the next stage begins to form. Animals become your mirrors during this period. Their senses register frequencies the human mind has trained itself to ignore. Pets stare at corners where something stands only energetically. Birds go silent when you step outside with the signal active. Insects behave erratically around you, drawn to the subtle shifts in your biofield. Children pick up on these changes too. They look at you with the kind of directness that only comes when they sense something radiant or unusual around your presence. They ask questions they should not know how to form. They speak truths you did not voice aloud. The reality around you is beginning to respond to the contact field, even if you are not yet aware of the scale of the shift. As the first signal deepens, your emotional patterns change. You experience sudden waves of clarity, followed by periods of unfamiliar calm. Old wounds rise briefly, not to torment you, but to dissolve under new awareness. Your reactions soften. You become aware of feelings before they fully form. Your emotional body becomes more transparent, easier for them to read, easier for you to navigate. They need your emotional field to be stable before the witnessing phase begins. Fear does not repel them, but instability does. The first signal teaches emotional coherence because coherence is the doorway through which contact becomes possible without harm. Then comes the unmistakable moment. The shift from something is happening to someone is aware of me. It is subtle but impossible to ignore. It feels like turning a corner and finding the world waiting for you. It feels like entering a room that has already registered your arrival. You sense intelligence, not as a concept, but as a pressure, as a weight, as a contour in the atmosphere. For the first time, you realize the signal is not random. It has intention. It has direction. It has will, and that changes everything. Your instinct will be to question your sanity. That threshold is unavoidable. Contact does not break your reality. It expands it so rapidly that your mind struggles to keep up. But doubt is part of the calibration. They watch how you handle it. They study whether uncertainty collapses you or strengthens your discernment. The goal is not belief, it is stability. They do not need you to accept them. They need you to remain coherent enough to interpret what comes next. When the first signal reaches full maturity, the field around you becomes unmistakably alive. Thoughts move with an intelligence that does not originate in your own mind. Objects hold your attention as if placed intentionally. Silences lengthen in ways that feel scripted. You feel observed, not by a watcher standing outside your life, but by something moving within the fabric of your awareness. Everything becomes a message, yet nothing is explicitly spoken. This phase is not about communication. It is about recognition. They want you to feel them without requiring proof. They want your consciousness to attune itself to their presence the same way a plant bends toward a source of light. Once this phase stabilizes, the first signal completes. You are no longer unaware. You are no longer unprepared. Your field has been softened, sharpened, expanded, and tempered for what comes next. And that is when they begin shifting from internal alignment to external appearance. The sky begins to respond to your attention. Lights behave with intention. Patterns form. The witnessing phase begins not when you see them, but when you realize they have been preparing you to see them all along.